Hey guys, Budcat7 here. Okay, it is Monday, March 9th, 2020, and I'd like to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. Alright folks, let's continue going forward in my series looking into the accounts of the quote-unquote giants, or large hominids as I like to call them, state by state, and I thought next we might move to Wyoming. And I was all ready to go to the Greater Ancestor Site and find at least something or rather, but when I got there, I saw this water pipe washes out 9-foot skeletons. I was like, okay, so maybe I just combine this with another state or something like that, but let's check this out at least. And when I clicked on it, I got this, page not found. So they didn't have anything there. And I was like, oh, shoot, this was rather convenient here on this really good website, but it was rather auspicious thing to happen because instead what I'm going to bring you is this article here, The Mystery of Wyoming's Giant Bones, and it's just a travel log type website here, I think. And even though this Maria Leones didn't write the article, Evangeline Jones did. This is 2016. And the article is absolutely fantastic. You're gonna love it. And very, very good. This is the kind of writing that I wish they did in Ancient Origins or Atlas Obscura. And, they have a couple of good writers there, but a lot of them suck. And the writing on this, I've read a couple of other things on this website here, and it's just, the writing is just excellent. So let's get to it, because you are going to just absolutely love this article. I promise you. Okay, the mystery of Wyoming's giant bones. Sometimes when a mystery presents itself, there's a need to investigate further. This recently happened to me when I became fascinated with the giant bones of Wyoming. The Thermopolis Library is a small but friendly place where they agreed to issue me a library card despite my lack of residency. Oh, I know, Sonia, quote-unquote, the librarian told me. It's the only library I've seen that separates its fiction from its literature, and as it boasted only a few shelves of quote-unquote literature, I soon found myself gravitating towards first-hand accounts of life in the region by early timers such as Buffalo Bill Cody and various Native American peoples. Just some great-great-great-granddaughter of Buffalo Bill Cody I went to school with, and she had a crush on me and I didn't know it. In my reading, I came across two strikingly similar accounts of a, quote, race of giants, unquote, that had occupied the area prior to the first Native Americans. The first of these, in Buffalo Bill's life story, an autobiography, copyright 1920, told this tale from the early 1870s. While we were in the Sandhills scouting the Niobrara country, the Pawnee Indians brought into camp some very large bones, one of which the surgeon of the expedition pronounced to be the thigh bone of a human being. The Indians said the bones were those of a race of people who had long ago lived in that country. They said these people were 3 times the size of a man of the present day, that they were so swift and strong that they could run by the side of a buffalo and, taking the animal in one arm, could tear off a leg and eat it as they ran. Which is, you see one of the illustrations, somebody did an illustration based on this account of Buffalo Bill Cody's, and you've probably seen it. I used it as a cover page for one of my videos on the joints. No, don't say that. The second appeared in Pretty Shield Medicine Woman of the Crows, copyright 1932. Quote, did you ever hear of the tribe of very large people once lived in this world, sign talker? Unquote. No, I answered. Well, once when I was a girl and our village was the place where we eat bear meat near the present head gate, several of us girls walked up to the dry cliff. This was to me a strange place. A great herd of buffalo had sometime been driven over the cliff and killed by the fall to the rocks below. There were many, many bones there that told a bad story, and on top, stretching out onto the plains, there were long lines of stones in this shape. She made a V with her hands, with the narrow part at the cliff's edge. These had helped to lead the running buffalo over the cliff. I have heard old women tell of such things being done before the horse came to the plains, and yet this herd of buffalo that went over the dry cliff may have been driven to death by another people. The cliff was so high, sloping in a little from the top, as its bottom were the bones, many, many bones. I noticed a dark streak on the face of the cliff. It was narrow and straight, reaching from the bottom of the cliff to the rim above. It looked to me as though the smoke of a fire that had burned there for many snows had made this dark streak on the smooth stone. And yet I had never heard anybody mention this. I could not keep my eyes from looking at this dark streak as we girls were walking toward it. We had brought some pemmican and had my ball with me because we intended to stay all day. The sun was past the middle when we began to dig with a root digger at the bottom of the cliff. We were not looking for any particular thing. We were only playing, but our playing stopped suddenly when in digging we brought up a man's skull that was twice as large as that of any living man, and with it there were neck bones that were larger around than a man's wrist. And just a little note before that they had driven the buffalo off a cliff. Apparently, archaeologists and anthropologists say that this was a form of the way these people killed these animals in the Neolithic and Paleolithic times. And one of the reasons, that many of the megafauna animals disappeared was because this was the type of hunting that they did. However, with buffalo, apparently they didn't kill them completely off, and they were certainly in abundance there, but a smaller form of bison, and I've talked about that on this channel in previous buffalo, about the buffalo in these early Holocene being absolutely huge. And some of these Indian burials contain these rather large buffalo, as they often recount, if you give an accounts on this channel in the Giants videos. We ran away from that place, and I was first to run. The size of the skull frightened me. Upon reaching our village, I told my father that what we had found. He had said he wanted to see the skull. We took him to the place, sitting off quite a distance while my father smoked with the skull. He said that it was a medicine skull and powerful. While we girls watched him, my father wrapped the great skull in a buffalo robe and buried it. It was Shows the Lizard who dug up that skull, and we found the blackened sticks of an old fire there too. Yes, she said thoughtfully, I believe that another kind of people once lived on this world before we came here. This big skull was not at all like our skulls. Even though I did not stay there very long, I noticed that its seam ran from the front to back, straight, with no divisions. This was curious. The accounts came from similar time periods, covered similar geographical areas, Wyoming, Nebraska, Montana, and the Dakotas, and reported similar findings. Why I had never heard of a race of giant people in the northwestern plains? Why had I never heard of a race of giant people in the northwestern plains? Question mark. I began to ask around. One person suggested that they could have been dinosaur bones. Wyoming is known for its massive deposits of dinosaur bones, and Thermopolis is home to the Dinosaur Center, where during the summer people can participate in excavations at a nearby dig site. Shows the wizard, I thought. But as I visited the center, gazing up at the cast of second and most complete Supersaurus ever found, at 32 meters long, basically an Apatosaurus on steroids, I found it a stretch that someone would mistake a dinosaur bone for a human femur, and even less likely a dinosaur skull for its human counterpart. Something else was going on. And a cast of Jimbo, the longest scientifically accurate mount of a Supersaurus in the world. And where are the real bones? Apatosaurus replica. Apatosaurus means deceptive lizard because it was originally mistaken for a mosasaur. Could it be also mistaken for a giant human? I doubt it. This was clearly a mystery that I couldn't solve on my own, so I wrote to George Gill, professor emeritus at the University of Wyoming, an anthropologist and expert in skeletal biology. What could these accounts be referring to? He kindly responded and agreed that both were likely reports of human bones. Quote, I think an early day surgeon would know a human femur when he saw one, unquote, Gill wrote. Quote, a lot of amputations were done in the old days, so perhaps the bones brought in for examination were a mix of human bone or bones and some other larger bones or fossils of large mammals or even dinosaurs. The surgeon probably had no comment on those specimens that he did not recognize, unquote. Quote, regarding the other story, Gill said, everything this woman describes seems to fit the archaeological and osteological record of our region. She obviously had encountered a buffalo jump site from a previous era, and she knew what she had found. And I think that the skull she found was likewise from an earlier era. Some groups in Wyoming around 2,000 years ago and earlier did have much larger and longer skulls than the late prehistoric and later people of our region. I have documented this from the skeletal record in our area and published it on it in a few places. So this guy, Gill guy, published on it in a few places, and of course, nobody cares. One such place is a dense tome called Skeletal Biology and Bioarchaeology of the Northwestern Plains. I ordered it through an interlibrary loan. Oh, you're getting a fun book, the librarian said, and checked out the chapter that Gill suggested. Sure enough, he had documented the skeletal remains from various sites and had found earlier specimens did have larger, longer cranial forms and exhibited greater similarities with ancient Paleo-Americans such as Spirit Caveman and Kennewick Man than with the latter Northwest Plains Indians. Yeah, but the Northwestern Plains Indians in 1800 were among the largest people in the world, and then gradually deteriorated down to normal size from 1800. Quote, some of these also show a 10% frequency of metopic suture, almost never seen on later Native American skulls, that joins the sagittal suture and makes a complete separation of the skull from front to back. Gill explained in his email. So here it is. Here's the diagram here with the suture going down, the center, and how the posterior meeting places and anterior ones, and a metopic suture. Skull showing metopic and sagittal sutures. A metopic suture occurs when the frontal suture fails to close in childhood. Well, in normal human beings, but this was normal for them, so it didn't fail or close. It just, that's the normal way they grew. So what did any of this mean? In his book, Gill suggested that the longer, larger skulls most likely represented, quote, an isolated remnant of some earlier North American population that simply missed incoming migrations or other sources of later gene flow, unquote. So like the Cro-Magnon there in the Canary Islands, these people had missed all these other gene flow coming in from the Siberia and Asia, whatever it is what he's saying. Okay, so people who were already here before the Bering Strait crossing or anything like that. Okay, so here's some, you know, circumstantial evidence to help support that idea, certainly. And you know, that's an idea that I go through on my channel. Yeah, my channel's not about the Nephilim and the Anunnaki and all that kind of stuff, just dealing with what we know and what we can understand. Okay, so keep listening here. In short, they were like, okay, so in short, they were likely an earlier people, and nobody's quite sure what happened to them. So they disappeared into the ether. But we know what they integrated in with the what we know as the American Indian tribes. But listen to this part about it; it's just fascinating. But the Pawnee had their own explanation, according to Buffalo Bill. These giants, said the Indians, denied the existence of a great spirit. When they heard the thunder or saw the lightning, they laughed and declared that they were greater than either. This so displeased the great spirit that he caused a deluge. The water rose higher and higher till it drove these proud giants from the low grounds to the hills and thence to the mountains. At last, even the mountain tops were submerged and the mammoth men were drowned. After the flood subsided, the Great Spirit came to the conclusion that he had made men too large and powerful. He therefore corrected his mistake by creating a race of the size and strength of the men of the present day. This is the reason, the Indians told us, that the man of modern times is small and not like the giants of old. Isn't that interesting, that whole tale there? Sounds familiar? I was reminded of this story recently when I visited Legend Rock. The Petroglyph site sits off Highway 120 down a long, dusty road. The looming red and yellow rocks overlook a relatively lush valley with a gurgling creek and sprinklings of sagebrush. An understandable location for ancient peoples to make camp. I stood studying the drawings, anthropomorphic and zoomorphic forms depicting elk, thunderbirds, and people with headdresses. Many of the drawings are in the Dinwoodie style, named after the Dinwoodie Canyon in the Wind River Mountains, and are estimated to be more than 2,000 years old, or even much older than that. New World bias aside, the same time frame as the earlier peoples whose remains were found in eastern Wyoming, or that's what they think. But here's some of these petroglyphs here, and I've seen many of these, and I don't have those videos on my channel, but the playlist I don't think is even there anymore. But they show me in Petroglyph National Monument, and I look at a lot of petroglyphs, but I don't have them posted. The Dinwoodie style is characterized by large humans and small animals as opposed to later drawings beginning around 900 years ago, which show small humans and large animals. Does this change indicate an actual difference in human size? Or is it simply a change in humans' way of thinking, a revised way of looking at the world, an appreciation of something bigger, a demonstration of respect? I didn't have any answers, but it seemed apparent from observing the world around me that this sense of appreciation and respect had diminished in recent years, and in some cases had all but disappeared. As I gazed across the valley to the hill opposite, where pump jacks hammered down into the Hamilton Dome oil fields, I considered how powerful we humans have become, regardless of our size. a pump jack working at Hamilton Dome across from Legend Rock Petroglyph site. And if you go through Montana and Wyoming, folks, I know I've been there. And if you go through like Montana, you just see there's miles and miles of rod, and then every once in a while you come with one of these pump jacks, either working or idle or whatever. It's just, that's part of the landscape there. Those that came before us left small drawings on rock walls, pits full of buffalo bones, and a scattering of skeletal remains. What would we leave in our wake? How would the earth respond to our own intrusions? What would it take to bring us back down to size? A flood, a drought, some other climate change-induced disaster? Whatever it was, I had no doubt the earth was more than capable of delivering, and I suspected that, quite likely, the process had already begun. So that's the end of the article here, and I thought it was excellent. And I'll leave a link to it in the description there. You can look at it yourself and maybe read some of the articles on this website. Just excellent writing and just a fascinating accounts there from Buffalo Bill and the native peoples there and their tale. Just amazing stuff. I thought it was excellent. So anyway, guys, unfortunately we don't have a lot on the skeletons from Wyoming, but I thought this article was a good alternative to having actual, newspaper accounts or whatever. I thought it was excellent. But if you liked it, please hit the like button, and I will be back with you soon with a new video on some very interesting stuff. Alright, guys. Anyway, Bloodcat7 signing out. Peace.